Something you said there, right? About the industry, because it's something I'm finding talking with some friends as well. They're finding in educating government ministers, politicians, even customers, they don't understand in the first instance often how industry works, and that's part of the challenge. People think it's a very simple thing to just surely put through a refund. But
Yeah, yeah.
as you're talking to there, it's more complex. There's lots of regulations. You've got to do things correctly, and it's not as cut and dry, right? Have you found the same? Like, have you found in terms of dealing with both, key stakeholders at government positions and regulation and client side, end user, how have you found that journey? Because I know a lot of friends have found that quite challenging.
I think it's been really, really challenging. This isn't a new challenge though. It's absolutely escalated by virtue of the COVID scenario and the volumes. It's not necessarily a new challenge, and part of it I think is the narrative that we need to weave. So that being, there's a general sense amongst the community of angst against insurers. Not necessarily out to always do the best thing or have the customer's best course of action at heart, which I fundamentally disagree with. I've been working for an insurer for 14 years. And absolutely, there's always a commercial take on it. We write terms and conditions specifically to price something. So if it's not covered, then unfortunately, sometimes we won't be able to come to the party, I guess. But overwhelmingly, we don't have a bad intention. So that's part of the narrative that we've needed to tell. And I've experienced this personally. So CoverMore and Zurich were called to the Senate Economics Committee to talk through our response to COVID. And this was part of the narrative with our federal politicians. About explaining this is what we're doing and this is the challenges in going about doing this, so that you can see that our intention with the refunds is pure. We're giving customers 100% of their money back. We don't have to. It's not part of the terms and conditions. We've actually been on risk for a certain piece of their cancellation of their trip, but it's the right thing to do. It's the humanitarian, moral thing to do. But there's complexities in that we just had to walk them through, which previously they didn't necessarily understand, and they wouldn't have cause to understand that in a routine environment. But the necessary questions to ask and to understand before anybody starts to level judgment, cast aspersions, or make decisions. And you can apply that unilaterally to the travel industry. You can apply that to the entire way we've handled COVID, right? But it comes back really, really centrally, and this links into, I guess, the answer to my first question about what did we learn? The communication. It's so central, and communicating in a crisis is so much more important. And this is one of the lessons I learned even talking to my team, that we had a challenging conversation a couple of months ago where a couple of them had turned around to me and said, we haven't discussed this before. And I was just lost, because I've got notes from previous meetings where we've talked about it, but they've just forgotten because of the volume of information that they're getting. It's natural human behavior that it's just slipped past their radar. So reinforcing that communication during the crisis is just so important. And I think that's all levels: customers, our distribution partners, our team members, my boss, my boss's boss, our ELT, everybody. I think that's a really central piece.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's that understanding industry, and even though you've got, as you flagged, really great business contingency planning, it wasn't to the level that was needed. And so this is just opening up so many other doors. And I think, for the end customer, I think there is a lot of emotion running around, and people, behaviors, we want our way, we want to get our world back. So it's easy to that emotion kind of rise up, where we don't really fully appreciate what's going on the other side of the coin. And you're right, it's across the whole travel industry right now. Now you mentioned, what do you think is some of those future changes to, not just insurance, but travel potentially on the back of this? What are some of these longer term implications to travel industry and travel insurance as a result of this?
Great question. I think I tend to be eternally optimistic, so maybe forgive me or indulge me a little bit. There's tough times all around. I'm seeing some people that, over the last 14 years, I've come to think more of as friends than colleagues in the industry, that, that they're suffering tough times. Losing jobs. It's again not confined to the travel industry, but incredibly a portion of our economy that's incredibly hard hit. I think out of this, we'll see a consolidation of market players. So there's just some smaller businesses which Unfortunately, they will have to close their doors because of this. They can't sustain a long or a prolonged period of no revenue. So I think there will be some consolidation of market players, a bit of I guess a cleanup to make it clearer to the consumer, and it's a double-edged sword there, and I say that on purpose because it will, I think, make it more transparent to the consumer. We've had the rise of the internet. I don't want to sound like Donald Trump by any means, but when we talk about, he talks about fake news, sometimes it's hard to distinguish what is truth from reality online. So I think we'll see some of that returning to a much heavier customer input on what can they believe, who do they tune into. I think absolutely we'll see a simple and more responsive industry. The unnecessary complexity will be redacted. We won't have that and that's going to be an ongoing, that'll take years to come back, but this has accelerated things so much quicker that the previous trajectory where it would have taken 20 years will now take 5. I think one of the biggest benefits out of COVID has been this pause moment. So I think collectively the globe has stopped and has started to reconsider what's important in life. I've done it. So I traveled 2, 3, 4 times a week, where I was investing my time and my attention and my energy has stopped and it's pivoted. And I think we've called that to say, well, was I really doing what was most important to me, into my value system, into my life? And I think that will also extend and apply into travel. We've seen it in some of the providers already, that they're calling on and they're starting to set the narrative on how do we return to travel. And a lot of them are doing that in a setting of, it needs to be a sustainable return. So some of the tourist destinations around the world that we were otherwise, for an overt way to say this, ruining, we should be more cognizant of that. The natural environment was suffering because of our desire to go and see it, driven by social media and that fear of missing out, as opposed to doing it in a sustainable way, seeing something different that was a bit more unique and a little bit more careful, sustainable all around. I'm really excited to see what happens with that. Hopefully that extends into, the cattle class of yesterday is no longer cattle class. Maybe we can return to the envy in the sky and enjoy sitting in that middle seat once again. But I guess we'll see where that goes with air travel. But I really do think that reset moment won't be lost. I'm a big proponent for that.
It's interesting. I actually had one of these conversations with Diana Brooke, the sustainable traveler. And so you can imagine, the whole conversation was around that. And, whilst nobody, even those that are big proponents for change, for sustainability, because industry recognizes, it's kind of been on this path of destruction, as it was called for so long. So this is a pause moment in and of itself that doesn't change and it isn't going to have a massive impact to the environment long term, other than a breath in the lungs. It's the behavior that's need to change. And I think you're right. I think there's definitely going to be more attention to that. I think there's more people seeing that.